Welcome students. In today's class we will start a new poem from your alternative English book Chinar, that is When Autumn Came by Faiz Ahmed Faiz. This poem is written in Urdu and later it was translated by Naomi Lazard. So before I start my class, I would like to tell you all that I have divided the poem in two parts. So in today's class we'll continue with the part 1 of the poem. So before I start my explanation of the poem, now let us see about the poet Faiz Ahmed Faiz. 1911-1984 in Sialkot. Earlier it was in India, but now it is in Pakistan. And he is an intellectual revolutionary poet and one of the most famous poets of the Urdu language. His works has been widely translated in English and other languages. He participated in the Indian labor movement. His well-known poetic volumes include Lamentations and Fingers of Breeze. He was not merely a poet, but also an activist, and felt for the poor and worked for them. He felt that through his poetry he can change the society and transform life. Now, since he was a revolutionary poet and he participated in various revolutionary movements, as it is already mentioned here that he participated in the Indian labor movement, he always wanted to bring a change in the society. And since he was a poet, he always wanted that through his works he can bring a change in the society where people will live peacefully without any distinctions among them. He always wanted a egalitarian society. So egalitarian society means a society where there is no distinction between the upper class and the lower class, where everyone is treated equally. So now let us see about the poem. So in the poem When Autumn Came, the poet gives a vivid description of autumn season. The poet tells us how autumn season comes and how it affects the trees then the birds. This poem is a revolutionary poem and it has metaphorical connotations. Through the poem, the poet expresses his voice against the exploitation of the poor people by the rich or the capitalist class of people. The autumn season is personified with the capitalist section of people, and the trees are personified with the working class. The poet ends the poem with a positive note and yearns for an egalitarian society devoid of pain and sufferings. Now in this poem, as we saw here, it has metaphorical connotations, and the autumn season is depicted as a season of decay, destruction and death. And it is also personified with the capitalist section of people, and the poet tries to tell us like how the capitalist class of people or the upper section of people treats or how they exploits the working section of people, how they are trampled out, how they are treated inhumanly. And he always wanted to bring a change in the society where the division among the people won't exist, and he always thought of an egalitarian society where it will be devoid of pain and sufferings. Okay, now let's start the poem. When Autumn Came. This is the way that autumn came to the trees. It stripped them down to the skin, left their ebony bodies naked. It shook out their hearts, the yellow leaves, scattered them over the ground. Anyone could trample them out of shape, undisturbed by a single moan of protest. Now see, the title itself tells us when autumn came. So the poet is trying to give a vivid description of the autumn season. And the poet tells us that the autumn season comes, how the autumn season comes and affects the trees and then the birds. Now we all have seen different seasons here. So we all know about the four seasons, that is spring, summer, autumn and winter. And each of these seasons have their own characteristics. So spring, you can say, when spring season comes, we see flowers bloom, new leaves comes out. Then comes the summer season, where the fruit ripens, and then gradually comes the autumn season, where the trees prepare themselves for the coming winter. And the trees become dry here, it turns to yellow in color from green, and slowly the leaves the tree the trees shed off their leaves, and they become bare, they become naked. And in winter season, we all know, the tree becomes completely bare. And we not only see the effect of this autumn season upon the trees, but also we see birds. These birds, they always migrate before the advent of the winter season to some warmer lands in search of a proper habitat where they can live properly. So, this poem, When Autumn Came, here the poet tells us about how or what happens when the autumn season comes, what effect it leaves upon the trees and also the birds. Now, this poem has metaphorical connotations. So, first of all, we will see the surface meaning of the poem, and then we will also see the metaphorical meaning of the poem which the poet Faiz Ahmed Faiz wants to deliver. So, since Faiz Ahmed Faiz was a revolutionary poet, and through this poem he expresses his voice against the exploitation of the poor people by the rich or capitalist class of people, which I have already told you all. So that will be the metaphorical meaning of the poem, and we'll come to it. Now see, this is the way that autumn came to the trees. It stripped them down to the skin. Now, as this autumn season is connected with the idea of oppression, and it is considered to be a very cruel season actually, when it comes, it makes the trees completely naked. As the leaves gets dried up, it fall down, and the bark of the skin of the trees also gets stripped off, leaving them completely naked. Now left their ebony bodies naked. Now ebony actually, it is a type of a tree unique to Africa, which is of rich intense black color. So when the trees gets dried up, the bark of the trees actually gets removed from it, and the dark black color of the trunk gets easily visible. So the leaves of the trees turn from green to yellow when autumn season comes. Then all the trees fall to the ground, and the bare trunks also comes out. The black color of the trunks is easily seen. It means that the trees becomes completely naked. Now it shook out their hearts, the yellow leaves. Now here, heart of the leaves, heart of the trees is referred as to the leaves. So slowly the green color of the leaves transforms into yellow color, and then the trees completely falls down, and they remain scattered all over the ground. And when they remain scattered all over the ground, any passerby would come and trample them and make them out of shape. And these trees, they remain undisturbed. They never ever utter a single voice, or they never moan for protest, or they never moan about their situation actually. they completely remain undisturbed. Anyone could come and trample them out of shape. So this is about how autumn season comes and how it takes grip of the vegetation, what effects it leaves upon the trees, how they remain naked, how the hearts of the trees get, you know, shook off, and also the leaves are trampled out of shape. Now, if we see the metaphorical meaning of the poem, the autumn season is actually personified with the capitalist section of people. And this autumn season, which seems to disturb the heart and soul and the body of the tree, same way it also disturbs the heart, soul, and body of human beings. They are torn apart. They are torn apart by destructive forces. So this autumn season is compared, or it is personified with the capitalist class or the upper section of the people. And like the harsh season, this autumn season also is like this harsh autumn season, this capitalist section of people is also considered to be oppressors, or the idea of oppression is clearly portrayed through this capitalist section of people. And the trees, you can say it is personified with the working sections. The way the autumn season takes the grip over these trees, how their leaves are shed off, how they become naked. So the same way it tells us about how this capitalist section of people exploits the working section. And the ebony bodies. So ebony bodies, as I have given, as the meaning is there, it means black trunk of the trees. So ebony bodies is also a metaphor here. You can also use this ebony bodies as metaphor, and it is used here to describe how human beings have been treated as slaves. The bodies, hearts, and soul of these poor and powerless people can be manipulated and trampled over, like the trees, which, like the leaves which remain scattered over the ground. Anyone, any passerby can step onto them and they can be trampled out of shape. And these trees, they never utter a single voice protesting about their condition. The same way, these poorless people, these powerless people, these poor people, they also never ever utter a single voice against these capitalist section of people. They remain silent, they are never allowed to raise their voice, they can be manipulated and they can be easily trampled over. So the season, the autumn season, how cruel it is. The same way here, the capitalist section of people is also considered to be a very cruel one. So for today's class, I would stop here, and the next part of the poem will be continued in the second part.